welcome. I'm Robert, and today I want to discuss Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends. These two games came out in 2021. They're civilization themed deck builders. It's become a favorite among solo board gamers, and I hadn't really played it until a couple months ago. I've been playing it on and off, and I want to discuss it. The reason why I didn't play it at the time, I acquired it. I acquired it relatively, soon after I heard about it. But the thing is, I heard that the rulebook was a bit of a poor experience to learn the game with. Even with the second edition, the second printing updated rulebook, which is what I have. So it sat on my shelf for a while just because I was a bit wary of tackling the game with the rulebook with its the reputation it had. But then the Imperium Horizons, which is the recently released standalone set, they released the rulebook around December last year. So I went ahead and downloaded, printed it, and started it, and that was what motivated me to finally play the game. Okay. So my experience with the game is I've had about 10 plays, okay, and I've used civilizations I've interchangeably used civilizations from both boxes. So in case you don't know, each box is standalone. Each box comes with its own set of civilizations and also its own market deck. The market deck is not supposed to be shuffled together. When you play, you have to pick a market deck from either set, okay? So I've played games with civilizations across both boxes and at different difficulties and using both market decks. So that's been my experience with the game. Okay, and to give you a very short overview of what the gameplay entails here. So you'll pick a civilization. You'll pick a civilization and then another one to go up against in the solo mode. That's all I've played solo, of course. You'll pick another civilization to go up against, and you'll grab the bot instructions card, which I printed these. More on that later. Okay, but they actually come in these. They actually come in the solo rulebook, right? And you have to look them up by civilization individually, but I printed that out. Okay. Now, so you'll pick a civilization to go up against, and you'll set up the market, and you'll set up your civilization, and you'll start, and you have to win by victory points at the end, and you'll play permanent cards that'll stay in front of you. You'll develop your civilization from a barbarian state to an empire state, most of them anyway. Then you'll just try to accrue as many victory points buying cards until the game ends. There's many ways in which the game ends, all right? There's multiple mechanisms for triggering the end game. The bot will simulate a human opponent and buy cards and accrue victory points and all that. It simulates an opponent really well. But yeah, so that's the gist of the gameplay. I'm also going to discuss some things that I did to enhance the gameplay experience towards the end of the video. So stay around for after my final thoughts on the game. I want to discuss some things I did to improve the experience. Okay, so that was the my experience, the gist of the game, and my background with it. All right, and why I hadn't played it till now. So now I want to discuss my negatives. All right, I want to get those out of the way because overall I do feel very positive about the game, but I do have some caveats. They don't bother me that much. They might bother you, and the list might seem a bit large of issues I have with the game, but they don't really bother me that much. It's mostly for you to keep in mind in case that you're thinking of picking this up. Right. So first thing I want to mention is the component aspect. So the game comes with these resource tokens, okay, that you use to keep track of victory points, population, and just building resources, right? Building materials. So I found the aspect of tracking resources for because you have to track resources for both you and the bot. Okay, I found it extremely fiddly. All right, you're gonna be gaining the resources will fluctuate a lot. All right, throughout the game. So because of that, you if you don't create other methods for tracking resources like I did here with these boards, more on that in a second, a lot of the time will just tracking the resources and subtracting and adding resources and the currencies, I found that extremely fiddly. All right, but just because it happens so frequently throughout the game, initially when I first opened it without really adding anything other than sleeves, I found myself just fiddling with the tokens too much. So that's why I went ahead and printed these Euro style tracking boards for the resources. To me, this is necessary for the experience to be smoother. All right, so every time you gain or lose a resource, you just move the token. That's it. You don't have to fiddle and return tokens to the supply or anything like that. So and also printing the same thing for the bot sped up my games a lot. So to me, this is necessary. I'll leave a link to that file in the description. All right, to me that's necessary. You should print that. And you can laminate it if you want to. I did, but that thing is necessary in my opinion. So the token aspect, I found it fiddly. All right. I also found that the card quality was a bit subpar. I think you should sleeve this game. They kind of were warped or pringled or whatever. When I opened them out of the box, they had like this bend to them. And they did not feel like they were the highest quality. I'm a compulsive sleever anyway, but even for people that are not sleevers, I highly suggest that you sleeve this game. Okay. I also want to mention that even with the Imperium's Horizons rulebook, which is a lot more comprehensive and better laid out than the rulebook that originally the game came with, I did not even bother with this myself. I just followed what people suggested, that the Imperium Horizons rulebook is just such a much better learning experience. It was an okay learning experience. The thing with this game, though, even with the improved Imperium Horizons rulebook, is that there's a lot of rules minutiae. There's a lot of little rules that are very easy to miss. Okay, you're gonna have to study that rulebook multiple times. Do highlights, create a cheat sheet. I printed out a lot of materials to help, from the files section, but I also made some materials myself. So I made my own cheat sheet, which I think I'll publish if I have some time. And even after I made my cheat sheet, I had to, I kept learning things that I didn't realize at the time when I read them that they were important. There were some things that I overlooked when studying the rulebook, so I had to keep writing over it, right? So definitely lots of little rules that are easy to miss. So you're gonna have to study this, multiple times. It'll take you, I would say, at least 4 to 5 games until hopefully everything will be played correctly. Okay, even with the Imperium Horizons rulebook, it's a bit of a tough. The game is a bit of a tough cookie to crack, right? When learning to play it properly. Another thing that I want to mention is that some folks find the gameplay unexciting in this. So this is not like other deck builders where there's combat, there's a bit more action, or like a dungeon crawler or anything like that. This is very much a bit more historical. It's not very action packed, is what I'm saying. So I've seen people that have walked away from the game after a while because they just find the gameplay dry, if you will. I did not, but I'm just warning you. I can see why people would have that complaint about the game. It felt unexciting to them. Not at all in my case. I did like it a lot, and I found it, more on that later. But I did like it a lot. But do your research. Hopefully, it's not it's not super expensive. You can maybe just get the Imperium Classics box and try it out and see if it's for you or not. But I've heard those complaints, and I can see why. It's not as exciting as smashing skulls in a dungeon crawler or something like that. And finally, my biggest complaint about the game is the scoring at the end. And I don't mean scoring as a victory condition. I think that as a victory condition in this game, I'm perfectly fine with the scoring aspect. My problem is the act of scoring itself. It's an absolute chore. And the reason for that is it's not like in other deck builders where you just grab your entire deck of cards and you just count the points. No, no, no. You have to keep everything exactly where it was at the end of the game. You have to, keep everything that you had in play. You leave it there. Stuff that was in your hand, you leave it in your hand, and your history pile, your deck, your discard pile. You have to leave everything exactly where you left it, and then you have to track special scoring conditions, like the Romans, for example. You score 1 victory point per 4 population that you have, right? So there's going to be tons of little scoring conditions for individual cards in all the different piles, and it just becomes a bit of a pain to keep track of everything. Okay, so the scoring at the end is a chore. There's absolutely no denying about that. That's the type of thing that an app would be much better suited for, and it would just do that for you, and it would be cool. Now, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it is in my opinion, is the weakest aspect of the game, the having to do all the scoring at the end to find out if you won or not. It's just a bit of a chore. It's just the way it is. But there's a couple of things I did to remediate that I added. I'll discuss that at the end. And yeah, you're definitely gonna have to bust out your calculator for this one. Okay. All right, so now I want to discuss my positives about this game, and really I'm going to rave about it because this game just does a lot of things that I love, and I think it does really well. I know that my list of caveats with the game might have seemed a bit lengthy, but I do love the game even despite all of that. Okay, so first I have to mention the deck building aspect, the turn-to-turn gameplay. So you know how some deck builders, like the majority of deck builders in general, tend to be on the simpler side. We're gonna, for example, Ascension, Star Realms. They tend to have this reputation of you could almost play them on autopilot, right? So because there's obvious, you have a hand of 5 or so cards, and there's an obvious thing that you're going to do that turn of what to buy from the market. Well, this is not like that at all. This game, as far as deck builders go, compared to other deck builders, it's the antithesis of that. There's no obvious gameplay other than maybe when there's cards in the market available that you could buy that provide you extra actions. Sometimes you're gonna be eyeing those cards a lot. That's the only semi-obvious thing, but even then, it's not necessarily the case based on what civilization you're picking up. So, the circumstances are always going to be changing depending on what civilization you picked up, which one you're playing against. So there's not really any set obvious path or turn of what you're going to do on your turn. Every turn is going to feel full of meaningful decisions, is what I'm saying. It's not going to feel like you're playing on autopilot in the slightest. Okay, so kudos to this game for providing that awesome decision space. And here's the thing, right? The reason for that is, in most deck builders, you can play your entire hand. Here, you have 3 action tokens that when you spend them, okay, that's it. You have 3 action tokens per turn. So actions are very precious, and you really want to do, make the best out of them. So it really makes you stop and think of what you should play and when you should play it. All right, on your turn. So it just really breaks that formula of almost the autopilot that a lot of deck builders suffer from. So just great, crunchy, delicious decisions. Just so satisfying to play turn to turn. Like every turn feels like a crunchy, meaningful decision. I just love the turn to turn gameplay in this. Just great, satisfying card play. And on that note, I have read some comments. I've read a couple of comments online on BGG mentioning how the gameplay here is almost reminiscent of like a satisfying gameplay from like a TCG or an LCG, and I couldn't agree more. And the cool thing about this is it offers that awesome gameplay. If Osprey Games were the devil, they would have turned this into a TCG. They could have. I mean, the foundation of great gameplay here and great design space, it's here. If they really wanted to, they could have somehow worked this into a TCG if they wanted. I'm really grateful they did, and it's just a board game, and you buy your you buy your set and you get all your civilization decks. That's it. It almost feels like an LCG in that regard. And it's like an entire cycle of each of the boxes is like a cycle of an LCG. I love that, and you get the same awesome gameplay that an LCG or a TCG would provide. But you don't have to deal with the baggage that TCGs come with, or LCGs. You don't have to deal with the deck construction. All the civilizations come with a pre-built deck, and I love that. You just pick up a civilization and another one to go up against. You can even use the printed out bot boards, all right, the bot instructions for each civilization. Just shuffle them, grab two, and you're good to go. And one thing I've done too is when I play, so I pick my two civilizations randomly, or I choose them, and then when I win, or I play until I win with that combination, and then I swap the civilizations, and now I try the one that I played against and try to win in that same combination, and that way I learned the intricacies of both civilizations. So just from shuffling that, you get at least a couple games if you want to try it that way. All right, so I love that about it. The game also has, I know I complained about the component quality earlier, but the game is gorgeous. The illustrations are gorgeous, and the game is also surprisingly thematic. The graphic design is pretty clear, gets the job done. It's not the prettiest game I've seen, but it is pretty gorgeous, and it's functional. All the iconography is clear, does its job. I like it, and the illustrations are gorgeous. And as I mentioned, the civilizations are surprisingly thematic. Now, I'm not a history buff, but I do like history, and I enjoyed it. I've seen tons of documentaries, so I do enjoy history, and I've liked learning about the different civilizations, and also the few things I know about some of the civilizations that are depicted here. I like how they implemented things that are iconic about those civilizations into the mechanics. The mechanics are kind of abstract, but even then, they found they found in the design space a way to translate those aspects about those civilizations into the mechanics here. It's kind of a surprising fit with the weird deck building mechanics in this game, how they've translated thematic things for each civilization here. Very impressive. Another thing that I love about this is compared to or relative to the setup time, which once you know what you're doing, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to set up, probably less. You get at least hour and a half to 2 hour session of just crunchy, delicious decision space, all right, and meaningful decisions. So it has a great setup time to session length ratio, and I love that. And let's talk about the solo aspect of this game. So how does it work solo? So the game has a very ingenious bot opponent system where this enemy civilization deck acts as a randomizer, and you simply, instead of resolving the effects written on the card, you refer to the bot sheet for each civilization. So there's going to be, for most bot cards, there's going to be an Empire and Barbarian side. So when they ascend from Barbarian to Empire, its behavior will change accordingly. So the bot deck basically acts as a randomizer, and it's just so smooth. Bot turns typically take a minute at most once you know what you're doing, and it really does a good job of simulating an opponent. And the bot effects, when you follow the instructions of the bot chart, it'll follow very closely what the behavior of the civilization actually is. So even if it's not 100% exactly what the card says when you play it, compared to what's written on the card, everything that the bot does is in line with the behavior that you would have as a player anyway. So it just follows the player behavior really, really well. It's just very, very well executed. I was a bit skeptical originally because I've played the only other David Tursi bot I've played is the one from Undaunted. I thought it was okay. The thing is that sometimes in that game the bot behavior was a bit strange, and the bot did silly things. But here, no, the bot is extremely smooth and is very, very well thought out. Just kudos to the solo mode and the bot behavior here. Just one of the best I've seen. The game will reward also repeated play. There's a lot to learn here. If you really wanted to if you really wanted to familiarize yourself with the civilizations over time, with repeated plays, finding out about the different mechanics, strengths and weaknesses of each civilization, there's a lot to explore here. And that's just with the Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends boxes. That's not even mentioning with the Imperium Horizons, which I do plan to acquire. Yeah, not even mentioning that. There's just a lot to explore here with all the different civilizations. And the replayability. Now let's move on to the replayability. I think the replayability of this system is absolutely nuts. This is just one of the most replayable systems I have in my collection. So it is highly replayable by virtue of the following. So there's all the different civilizations. You get 16 total civilizations between both boxes, okay? So there's tons of combinations there already. There's different difficulty settings. There's a campaign mode if you want to play that. And also, there's the two different market decks, okay? So you can, every time you start a game, you pick a market deck from either box, and they're pretty different, all right? There's things to keep in mind. Once you learn the contents of both market decks, it will change the trajectory of the game significantly, okay? And it'll cater to different civilizations in different ways. So there's difficulty, different market decks, the different civilizations, campaign mode, and also once you add Imperium Horizons, the replayability of this system is just gonna go into the fucking stratosphere! So it's just insanely replayable. You're never gonna be bored with this. And like I said, just from shuffling the bot cards, pulling out a couple, you get at least 2 games. You can just switch places of the civilizations, and you get at least 2 games. And that's assuming that you win on the first try. You might not necessarily win. I keep playing until I win with that civilization against the other one. I don't play another game or change anything until I win that. So just insane replayability, right? So now let's move on to final thoughts. So you might not want to pick up Imperium Horizons or Legends if you don't care for games with very little combat or with a more historical theme. Also, if you don't want to have to do any work beyond the components that are included in the box. So reason I say that is you might have to sleeve or add a couple extra tidbits to make this experience a bit smoother. Those bot cards that I printed, they're not included in the game. There will be updated versions of that in the Imperium Horizons, though. And just to be clear, you do have the bot instructions for each civilization in the solo rulebook that is included in the game, but it's a bit impractical compared to printing this from the files section. Okay, so I think to me that's mandatory pretty much to make it just to enhance the experience. And the Euro tracking boards, which I'll talk about at the end, and other things that I did. It's not the only things I did to improve the experience. Okay, I'll talk about all of that in the next section, but I really can't see myself playing the game without the things I did to improve it. So. And also games where the scoring condition, the scoring at the end is how you win. I know folks don't care for that. And the scoring, not as much of a victory condition, but the act of scoring in the game is a chore, period. It's just the way it is. So if you don't care for those things, then yeah, maybe skip on this. I still suggest, just because it's relatively, the price is pretty accessible for at least one of the boxes. Try out Imperium Classics, see if the game is for you, and then you can go from there. Okay, so that's why you might not want it now. On the other hand, you might enjoy this game if you enjoy the civilization theme, you enjoy history, you like deck builders with meaningful decisions that don't play on autopilot like many other deck builders, and also if you want a game with an insane amount of replayability, and also a game or system that sets up in relatively short periods of time and offers you a lengthy that offers lengthy sessions with meaningful decisions throughout. And also, if you enjoy games that simulate opponents really well with very little maintenance and upkeep. Okay, so that is my thoughts on Imperium Classics and Legends. And now let's talk about the things that I did to improve it and to store it. Okay, there's some things here that I think will really enhance your gameplay experience, so let's discuss that. All right, so let's check out how I stored everything back in the box. So I'm gonna open this, and you can definitely store everything even sleeved back in one of the boxes. You don't have to keep both. So one of the first things you're gonna have to do for sure is get rid of the insert that the box came with originally. If you're gonna sleeve the content from both boxes, it's definitely not gonna be useful. Here's all the printed cards, double-sided. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I think this is essential just to speed up setup and just make it a bit more practical to have the bot instructions at a glance. Okay, let me put this aside. And now these are the Euro tracking boards that I showed earlier. Now one little tip is I added on the back, these are a few strips of friction tape. Okay, so what that'll do is it'll make it so that the board stays in place when you move the tokens around. If not, this thing might slide around unless you print it on heavy cardboard or something like that. That's gonna be the case, but just a bit of friction tape, which I always recommend. It has many uses. It'll keep it in place when you move the tokens around. Okay, so here are the two resource trackers. Okay, and you have both the content of both boxes here. So let's look at that. And I have the Empire Barbarian state cards. Which I like putting. I like putting the exhaust tokens here, so that's why I like having the top loader. So here are these are the strips that are designed for. Well, actually, let's be more specific. So the game includes on the punch board. There's this thing that you use to set up the market, right? But one thing that really annoyed me was trying to keep everything aligned perfectly. In my shots, if you've seen my videos, I'm a bit of a freak when it comes to that. I like everything looking aligned. So one trick here is just adding a little piece of tape, and that way it'll act like a trifold, all right? So you can add a piece of tape like that. See, so piece of tape there, a piece of tape here, okay? And it'll then be like a trifold, right? And you just do this, and you will have, and I'll also show a little bit of footage of what that looks like, right? So you set it up really quick, right? And you're gonna have your market perfectly aligned, okay? Now so if you buy both boxes, okay, you're gonna have an extra set of that thing I just showed you, right? So one thing, once again, because the bot hand row, you're supposed to put it in front of you, and I just like keeping everything aligned. So what I did with the extra set, okay, that you're not really gonna have any use for otherwise, you can paint it, you can use acrylic paint, whatever you want, and just painted it, or well, not painted it. This is just carbon fiber wallpaper or tape that I have, right? Adhesive. So I applied that, and then I also evenly spaced out the bot numbers for the hand, and you now have another trifold like this that helps it set up really quick. So you'll have a perfectly aligned market and enemy bot hand area, and you can see that the tape, the carbon fiber already acts like a tape on that end, and then you just add a little piece of tape. You add a little piece of tape here, and you're good to go. Okay. Now notice that I also added a few pieces of friction tape on the back. So again, that's just to help it. That's just to help it stay in place so that it doesn't slide around. That's very important. I really dislike it when components that I want them to stay put slide around, especially because you're going to be picking up cards from the market area. So this really just is a huge improvement. Just adding a few pieces of friction tape, right? So this is a huge improvement. Quickens setup, keeps everything tidy and neatly aligned. Okay, and now regarding how I fit everything here, so I took I think I taped this. Yeah, I think I might have taped that or not. Did I? Yeah, I think I taped that, so I'm gonna leave it there. But I think what I did was this was a 800 count card, 800 count storage box, and I just cut it and in half. I trimmed it a bit and I fit it there. And that's a bit overkill. You can just use foam core. I didn't know about it at the time. Now I do have foam core, but you can just tape up, cut up and glue a bit of foam core there, and that'll work fine. And I just had a bunch of these sleeve bags. Okay, the sleeve that when you buy sleeves, they come in these little bags. So I had a bunch of them. I always try to recycle them. I would at some point definitely like to have some dividers though, a little upgrade for sure. So that'll be nice at some point. And then you have the market deck for classics and then legends here, right? So you have the two market decks, and separately each has their own solstice card, and everything is separated here by set. Now here in the middle, these are the extra tokens that don't really, I play solo, so a lot of these I'm not really gonna need, so I just keep them there. And here is where I have, so these are the tokens that I use. And for exhaust, I showed that earlier briefly. Instead of moving the token around, I simply flip it. That means that it's used. So I have my not exhaust, my action tokens, right? And you got the die, nothing special there. I also added a bit of carbon fiber tape on the back of the tokens that I use on the Euro on the tracking resource tracking board. So, but that's just me being extra. Now, the other thing I have here, all right. So remember, I mentioned that there's something I did to just facilitate scoring a bit. Well, so here's what I did. So I have a few pebbles and these tiny dice, right? So I think these are 4mm dice, less actually. So these I just put on, say, let's grab a card here. This, right? So well, let's pretend that this has one of those asterisk for weird scoring conditions, right? So once I calculated, I just put it like that. I'm gonna show you a picture there of what that looks like too. I took a picture earlier just so that you see. But yeah, so I just spread the cards out, and I even I leave them where they're supposed to be in their areas, but I just fan them out and leaving the bottom corner, the bottom footer of the card, I leave that exposed. And I just add a bunch of dice, and that way I have the exact numbers that I need all at a glance, and then I add them up at the end, okay? Sometimes cards score a bit higher than that, so I have this the 10s, okay, for cards that score higher than 6. And the other thing is the pebbles, right? So when I'm done scoring, I still need to score the bot and vice versa. I can do it in whatever order. So when I'm done scoring, let's say that the bot scored 100 and something, right? So I can go up here and say the bot scored 103. I think that's what the bot scored last time, right? So I can just go, I put these pebbles. I don't have to write it down anywhere. I don't have to memorize it. That's the score of the bot, right? I just put those on the bot's board, and then I go over to my side, I score everything, and then I compare it to the bot score, and that's it. All right, so that's why I have these pebbles here, and that way I don't have to write it down. I don't have to try to memorize what the bot scored. I just, I try to facilitate that as much as possible. This has made it easier for me. Like I said, the scoring aspect is a bit of a pain, and this has definitely helped. And these are finally before I because I didn't show this. This is how I have the tokens, sorted in these 3 little containers. But I don't use this as much. The only ones that you're gonna be using for the most part, maybe that'll change later with future mechanics. But just putting these victory point tokens on the market cards, that's mostly the ones that you're gonna be using. And when I as you saw earlier, so if I go past 10 and to add more denomination, I just add 1 here, right, for victory points, and then I keep tracking with 1 through 9, and then when I reach 10, I just add this, and then I keep using the tiny token for the scoring, and I just keep stacking this as I accumulate, right? So I do use these, right, when I reach the 10s with the different resource types. But that is it, and everything fits back beautifully in the box, folks. That's how I store everything for Imperium Classics. But once I get Horizons, I'm sure this will change. And if you end up liking the game, you're probably gonna get Horizons anyway. But yeah, that's how I stored Classics and Legends. And I want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, if you found it informative, make sure to like and subscribe and share. And I'll see you in the next one.